Hi there and welcome. My name is Alicia and this is the free Spanish course for English speaking beginners, so you can start learning Spanish from scratch. We begin this course with the first lesson, of course, that's about saludos y pronunciación, what is the same, greetings and pronunciation in Spanish. You're learning the greetings expressions and also the alphabet and how to pronounce in Spanish like a native. So we are going to start with saludar los saludos, which you see here written, greeting the greetings. So we begin by seeing the Spanish words and phrases in your screen. I'm going to explain them to you, but I'm not going to translate. In the next slide, you'll see the translation, but you won't need the translation actually, because with the explanation, everything will be crystal clear. So the most simple greeting in Spanish is hola, which you can say anytime and to anyone, even though it's a little informal, but it's polite and you can say that almost always. You can also greet specifically in the morning or during the day by saying buenos días. If it's the afternoon, you can switch to buenas tardes if you want to. And when it's already dark, you will say buenas noches. So that's what you say in the evening and also at night if you're going to bed and you want to wish the person, well, to have a good night's sleep. After greeting, we're going to politely ask ¿qué tal? To ask how the person is doing in Spanish. And the most common way to answer ¿qué tal? Is by saying bien, gracias. So that's short and sweet. You say that you're doing well and you thank the person for asking. If you're not so well, you're not going to say, I am feeling lousy today, everything is doom and gloom. You're not saying that because that could be a little socially awkward and uncomfortable for the other person. So you do not go and throw the truth out there to the person, okay? You just say something a little more vague like normal, gracias, okay? So, well, it's not very well, but it's not a very bad day for me either, okay? And you do say thank you because, well, you're being polite. Even if you're not super happy, you are polite in any case. And if you want to say goodbye, one way to say it is hasta luego. And if you want, you can even say adiós, which is a final goodbye. In theory, but many people use it because it's very short, so they use it in a daily basis just to say goodbye to someone that they are going to see the next day. So adios can be like very dramatic, but it can also be very normal in daily life to say goodbye. All right, so let's see all these expressions one more time. And now you're going to see the translations, but I'm not going to say the translations aloud to you, so you can really start, well, diving into the Spanish language. You have hola, buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches. ¿Qué tal? Bien, gracias. Normal, gracias. Hasta luego. Adiós. One of the good things of having a video lesson is that you can change the playback speed if you want. So if it's too slow for you, you can speed it up. If it's too quick, slow it down, whatever it's better for you. Or pause it if something isn't clear, whatever you want actually, okay? So you have the choice here. Importante, which you may suppose it means important. You have in Spanish some polite expressions such as por favor, to ask something please. You also have muchas gracias, which is gracias but intensified. So you are thanking by saying thank you very much. Then the reaction to muchas gracias will be de nada, okay? And if someone makes a mistake, the person will say perdón. And the way to react when someone is apologizing in Spanish is by saying no pasa nada, okay? So it's quite simple. You see here these 5 phrases will get you anywhere, because being polite is a very important part of social life. So even if you only know a very limited, repertoire of Spanish words, if you use these words wisely and abundantly, well, you can be sure that people will notice that you're a foreigner, that you're still struggling a little bit to speak Spanish, but you're doing your best. You're, showing that you're making an effort to be polite, and this is very, very important for us. Okay, so native speakers, they tend to be very patient and kind when they see that a foreigner is trying to speak Spanish to them, and they will be even more welcoming to you if you use this kind of words. And also important to say sí and no, which, it's quite clear what I mean, okay? Sí, no. So let's repeat. Importante. Por favor. Muchas gracias. De nada. Perdón. No pasa nada. These are just the basics. You have many other expressions to be polite and to greet in Spanish, but if you manage this, well, you're good to go. I'm sure of that. Okay? Well, you can practice the information that you see in the material, because you can pause the video if you want to do the exercises right away. Not exercise, not like lifting weights or something, no, just do the activities that you have here for you. You have them in the screen if you want to just do them spontaneously. If you pause the video, you have the answer keys as well, or you can stop the video and, do the exercises in the PDF that you also have for you. So whatever you like. The exercises, they are quite straightforward and they will help you memorize all this information. Okay, so it's very important to practice. Then, if you are, feeling like you want to move forward, let's do it together, learning el alfabeto, the alphabet in Spanish, which is very important because I am not going to say the names of the letters in my explanation of the pronunciation, naming them in English, because it can be very confusing for me and for you. So, in order to make things easier, the letters that I'm going to mention when I explain the pronunciation will be mentioned in Spanish. So it's very important for you to understand the alphabet in Spanish. In the alphabet, what do we have? We have letras. Okay, so las letras are the letters. The examples, la A, la B, and so on. La A, why do I say la? Well, because that's the article that is referring to the letter in Spanish. Okay, we're going to learn articles in the next lesson, but it's just a small spoiler. Okay, so I'm going to read to you the letters in Spanish. Just stay with me and you see it's quite simple. So we have A, B, C, Ch, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, L, M, N, Ñ, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. You can also name Y, Y. You can also name B, B larga, and V, V corta, as you see here below. Okay? So these are the letters in Spanish. I can repeat 5 times, but it's not necessary because you can play the video again, this segment, if you want to, because, well, the letters are what they are, okay? So we're not inventing the wheel here. It's just the name that the letters have in Spanish. And, well, some of them are a little bit different in English, so it's important for you to get familiar with the letters. You do have flashcards to practice that content, okay? Because the flashcards of the course, they are really, really good for practicing interactively and with games and so on. So you're going to love it, I am sure. And pay attention because this combination here, it's called che, but if you're like old school like me, okay, the same thing happens with ella, okay. Calling this ella is something that old school people like me do, because in current Spanish these are not letters anymore, okay. You would name ch and ll just like that, but many people still use this denomination. So che, ella is officially not letters per se, but we tend to name them this way, because when I was growing up I learned them as letters in the alphabet, and like I think since 2010 they are not official letters anymore, okay. So let's talk about el acento, okay. El acento is the accent, okay, so it's a diacritic. What does it mean? This little symbol here can be placed above all vowels in Spanish, and it doesn't change the sound of the vowel, but it makes it stronger, okay. So when you see that a vowel appears with el acento, you know that you have to stress this vowel. The pronunciation isn't going to change. You're not having a different sound, but you're having a stronger, an emphasized sound, okay. So you have a con acento, e con acento, I con acento, O con acento, U con acento, okay. And if you observed, when I name the 5 vowels in Spanish, I am being very literal, because Spanish is literal. Regarding vowels, what you see is what you get. So do not get creative here. The 5 vowels in Spanish are the ones that you just heard, and I'm going to repeat to you. A, E, I, O, U. Okay? Just like this. You just keep your mouth open. Well, your mouth is wide open when you say ah, okay? When you say e, o, it's not so open, and when you say I, u, it's a little more closed, okay? So let me just repeat that to you. A, e, I, o, u, okay? So my mouth is, well, varying a little bit the openness of it, because this is how you make different sounds, okay? It's a mouth that's opening or closing up. Okay, but the secret to pronouncing correctly in Spanish, if you are a native English speaker, is assuming the fact or accepting the fact that you only have 5 vowels in Spanish, and what you see is what you get. Do not try to read Spanish vowels as if they were English vowels, because English is not so literal regarding vowels. Okay, so it's very important in Spanish to pronounce correctly. Do as native Spanish speakers do. Native Spanish speakers only know 5 sounds of vowels, and each of them has its own letter. So you're not going to make any strange things here, okay? You're just going to pronounce A, E, I, O, U. And this is the best kept secret. Well, not actually kept secret, because I tell it to all my students all the time, because that's that's quite easy, but it's quite hard at the same time, because many native speakers do not realize what they are doing. So when you speak English, if it's your mother tongue, you don't realize what you're doing. You just use the words and the sounds, and you do that on autopilot because it's your first language. But when you learn a second language like Spanish, you have the tendency, because everybody has this tendency when learning a foreign language, to do the same thing as you do in your native tongue, to do it in a foreign language. And it doesn't work like this. So in English, you may have a very complicated system of vowels, but you do not do that in Spanish. You don't have that. You just have A, E, I, O, U. So when you see A, E, I, O, U, there's 5 letters, you know that the corresponding sounds will be A, E, I, O, U. Do that and you will not have such a foreigner sounding accent. Okay, so it's a very simple way of minimizing your English accent. Okay, so it's a best kept secret because many people do not even think about it, but that's a fact. And if you do that, your pronunciation will be much better from the start. Okay, So after having said that, which is a very important tip that I have to you, and is a secret that you can share with anyone, okay, you have my permission to share it. You have the exercises, you can, well, take your time to do them. And then you have the word stress, la acentuación, okay? So let's see how it works. I will read it in Spanish and you have the translation, and I'm going to explain it to you, okay? So do not panic, it's a lot of Spanish words at once, but I'm going to explain it to you. Si una palabra lleva acento, ahí está la sílaba tónica. That means if the word has an accent, there will be your stressed syllable. You don't have to make any calculations, nothing, okay? It's really an automatic reaction, okay? So you see the word América. You stress where you see the acento, América. Or perdón, you see, perdón. You just go and stress it. To stress, I mean, you just emphasize this vowel, okay? You pronounce it a little stronger. You do not change the sound of the vowel. You just go all for it, okay? You say América, perdón, like with passion, okay? Like with your heart and your soul, okay? Well, si una palabra termina en vocal, N o S, acentuamos la penúltima sílaba. So if a word ends in vowel or in the letters N, S, we stress the second to last syllable, okay? It seems like too complicated, but it's not, okay? Think about the last syllable and the syllable before that, okay? So this is the second to last, it's the penultimate. I think I pronounced it right in English, but I'm not sure right now. So never mind my English. Pay attention to my Spanish, okay? Guitarra, volumen, crisis, and this is how you do it, okay? I'm going to repeat it. Guitarra, volumen, crisis. You know, there's like a melody, okay? There's ups and downs when you pronounce, and this is what's supposed to be done. After having seen these two principles, which are very basic, it's not all that there is to learn about pronunciation, but it's what you need to know right now in order to start grasping how the Spanish sounds work. So we're going to start with la pronunciación. Okay, so let's learn the pronunciation in Spanish. And it's much simpler than you think. The examples that you're going to say are names of places, okay? So no vocabulary that you must learn, okay? But maybe you see the names of the place and you say, oh, maybe I've been saying that wrong all my life. That can happen, okay? Don't be ashamed of yourself. It's perfectly normal. But now that you know how to pronounce correctly, you'll be pronouncing all the Spanish words in the world correctly, because these are general principles that will help you saying any word in Spanish. Even if you don't know the meaning of it, it doesn't matter. You know how to say it. Okay, so that's already a big step if you think about it. Okay, it's very empowering to know how to pronounce correctly the words in Spanish. So, as you know, you have 5 vowels in Spanish. I won't stress that anymore. You have A, E, I, O, U. Do not do anything else about them, okay? You see A, the letter A, then you pronounce A. And the same with E, I, O, U. And you are done, okay? Then, if you see the letter H, you know that H is silent in Spanish. So you should write it, but you will not say it aloud. So it has no sound. You say Honduras, Bahia. And that's right. The letter ñ has a special sound, which you can hear in the words España, Cañamel. Okay, it's more like when you say lasagna, okay, in Italian. Okay, in Italian it would be the letters GN, but in Spanish it's just N with this beautiful thingy above it. Then you have the combination of CH, which has the sound of match in English. So you say Cochabamba, Chile. Okay? Then, if I'm going too fast, you can slow the playback speed of the video, okay? But there's no more information to that, okay? You have another video where I show you more examples of Spanish pronunciation if you want to have more examples, but I'm trying to be very focused here and only telling you the things that you must know in order to pronounce correctly in Spanish, okay? So here it will be very straight to the point, okay? Then you have all these combinations of letters, which are CA, CO, CU, QUE, QUI. Well, here, pay attention, QUE, QUI, the letter U is silent, so it will be written but not spoken. The sound that you have here is the sound of K, okay? So here in the square brackets, you see a symbol that you don't have to know this symbol, it's just there in case you are familiar with this way of showing sounds in writing. But if you are not familiar with this symbol, don't worry, you will be able to understand what I mean, because this is a video, so you can hear my voice and pay attention to this sound even if you don't know what that means. But you suppose it's K, like in English when you say, for example, something with coffee, okay? Perfect, because I have coffee just because for a moment my mind was blank, okay? So like coffee, okay? So what you have here, Caracas, Colombia, Cuba, Querétaro, Quito, all right? So sound K all the time. But pay attention, because if you have these combinations, the combinations are ZA, ZO, ZU, CE, CI, you have two possibilities of sound, okay? The first one is the one that is, dominant in Latin America, okay? So in Latin America, everybody will make the sound of S when they see these combinations of letters. So someone from Latin America will say, Zaragoza, El Pozo, Pozuelo, Barcelona, Ciudad. And that's 100% correct. But you may have noticed so far in this video that I make a different sound. I make the sound of th, like when you say thing in English. That's because I speak the Spanish that is spoken in most of Spanish territory. So it's called Castilian Spanish. It's like, it's very hard to make a comparison with English, but yes, that's the Spanish that is spoken in most of the Spanish territory. Not all, okay? Because in some regions of the south, the tendency will be to pronounce S in these cases, okay? And also in the Canary Islands. But in most of the Spanish territory, you do make this sound of thing when you pronounce these words here. Zaragoza, El Pozo, Pozuelo, Barcelona, Ciudad. Okay? So both are correct, okay? The Latin American sound and the Spanish sound. So to simplify it a little bit, you can do whatever you want. I mean, for most people, it's simpler and comfortable to use this sound. So instead of saying Zaragoza, just saying Zaragoza, and everybody will understand you, so don't worry about it, okay? So this doesn't make communication harder, not at all, okay? So you can use both sounds here, but of course you cannot just invent a sound that's not here, okay? So either you make S or you make Th, okay? Your choice. Then you have all these combinations, which are GA, GO, GU, GUE, GUI, and the sound will be G, okay? Like you are trying to expel the air from your throat, but you block it, okay? That's what you do, okay? Like G, well, like when you say ghost in English, okay? And in this combination GUE, GUI, the letter U is written, but it's not spoken, okay? So you don't have this sound. So you're going to say Málaga, Bogotá, Guatemala, Guernica, Guinea. All right? Then you have all these combinations of letters, which are JA, JE, JI, JO, JU, GE, GI. And one more time, you have two possible ways of making this sound. It depends a little bit on the region that you are living or where you come from, and also a little bit on the personal preference of the person. So most native Spanish speakers will make a sound that's not very powerful, so it's a soft sound, okay? Just like in English when you say hot, okay? So you don't go down your throat and you don't do that. You just say hot, okay? So you just expel the air and that's it, okay? So you feel like the hot air coming out of your mouth. So most Spanish speakers, especially in Latin America, they would pronounce these words as you can hear now. Jalisco, Ojeda, Jipijapa, Tajo, Tajuña, Gerona, Gijón. Okay, and that's totally correct. But if you pay attention to my voice in my Castilian Spanish, I will make a stronger, powerful sound, okay? Because this is the way most people do in the Spanish territory, okay? So Castilian Spanish would do the following. Jalisco, Ojeda, Jipijapa, Tajo, Tajuña, Gerona, Gijón. I am exaggerating here, but yeah, you will hear that many people do make that in Spain, so it's quite strange, okay? It's very guttural, it's like very deep in the throat where that sound is coming from, okay? You are expelling the air, but you're in a much deeper region of the body, okay? So very deep, okay? So you can do both, okay? And for most foreigners, the first way of pronouncing is much comfortable. So you can just use the sound that you do in English when you say home or hot or hotel. Okay, so that's perfectly fine. One mystery word in Spanish is Mexico, which is written with the letter X, but the sound is the sound that you saw here. So most Mexicans would say Mexico, so with the sound very soft. But someone from I don't know, Madrid, for example, would say Mexico, stronger, okay? But even though you do write Mexico with the letter X, the sound is not X like taxi, okay? It's a special word. So if you go to Mexico, never say Mexico, because okay, people won't throw stones at you. That won't happen, okay? Don't worry about that. But if you want to sound more knowing of Spanish, well, when you go to Mexico, just say Mexico, okay? And then you have here also two options, okay? If you see the combination LL and also the letter J at the beginning of the word or in the middle of the word, then you have two possibilities of uttering the sound. The first one will be quite simple, just like the vowel E, okay? So you can say Llanes, Villa, Yucatan, Cayo. That's very comfortable, okay? So many native speakers do that, okay? Especially in Latin America. So that's the trend over there. So many native speakers won't make a strong sound here. It's just the sound of this vowel E. But in other regions, and for example in Castilian Spanish, the tendency is to make a sound which is G, okay? So like jeans. So the thing is, it doesn't sound like a vowel. In this case, yes, if you say Llanes, you're using the sound of a vowel. But if you say the other variation, you say Llanes. So it's not a vowel sound at all. You say Llanes, okay, and you're done. So in Castilian Spanish, most people would say Llanes, Villa, Yucatan, Cayo. And as I said, both are correct, okay? You can do whatever you feel like doing. And the thing is, if the letter J is at the end of the word, it always has the sound of E, okay? Uruguay. Then you have both letters, which are V, B, and both have the same sound in Spanish, okay? So I know this sounds like a crazy talk, but it's a fact. Officially in Spanish, both letters have the same sound, which is B. So you would say Venezuela, Valencia, Barcelona, Berga, okay? And this is so because both letters have the same sound. You see, my two lips are touching when I say Venezuela, okay? That's the official Spanish, okay? But it is a fact that in some regions there is a tendency of pronouncing this letter V as V, like in English when you say vacation, okay? That's a very specific phenomenon, okay? So this is not general Spanish, but if you do hear some people saying Venezuela or Valencia, especially in Latin America, which is why I didn't make the sound here in this example words, well, it happens, okay? So this V sound can happen, but it's a very local phenomenon. And if you look at any current Spanish grammar book, well, this is the fact, okay? So officially, you do not have the sound V in Spanish, even though some people do make this sound, okay? And as I told you, this way of pronouncing V is more common in Latin America. In Spain, it's very uncommon, but it can happen locally, okay? So, as I told you, and my pronunciation of this example words was the Castilian Spanish one. So I said Venezuela, Valencia, Barcelona. But if you're using the Latin American way of pronouncing, you would say Venezuela, Valencia, Barcelona, okay? And the last word here is very strange because Berga is a city near Barcelona, okay? And it's pronounced this way, Berga, okay? But if you write the same word but replacing B with a V, then you're going to say a very, very, very rude word in Spanish. So it's a very word that you shouldn't say, well, for example, to your boss or to your in-laws, okay? So do not say this word with the letter V in Spanish because, well, with B is a city and, well, it's a city, so it's not a rude word. But if you see it written with the letter V, then you know it's not a word to be used lightly, okay? So it's very rude. Then we are going to see one of the most interesting aspects of Spanish pronunciation, which is, I'm not going to reveal you yet, but we will start with the first step, which is paying attention to the pronunciation of the letter D, just like you do in English, okay? So take the word dollar, okay, or in Spanish, dólar. What to do here is that when you pronounce the letter D, your tongue does all the work, okay? And the work is moving, reaching out for the front teeth, okay, and touching the front teeth with the tip of the tongue. You may also touch a little bit the gum, but, well, you're aiming for the teeth. So your tongue goes in this direction, okay? It goes straight to your teeth. It doesn't go, it doesn't bend backwards, okay? You wouldn't do that to say dollar, okay? So to say the letter D in dollar. But of course, if you are, for example, American, you will bend your tongue backwards to say dollar, okay? So the end of dollar is your tongue flexing to the other side of your mouth, but to say D, you're doing this movement with your tongue, okay? So if you are aware of that, it's much easier to pronounce the letter R in Spanish, which many people say it's impossible. Oh, how can you roll your R? It's not impossible, and I'm showing you how it's made possible. So the first possibility that you have in Spanish is the letter R inside a word or at the end of it, okay? What you're going to do is a slight variation of what you did with D in dólar, okay? So your tongue is going to do the same movement, okay, with a slight change. because the tongue is going to make a much quicker movement, okay? And there isn't going to be much contact between your tongue and your teeth. That's the difference, okay? So if you say dólar, the do part of it is going to be a long movement. Your tongue is like enjoying the ride, okay? So it's doing dólar, okay? And there's a lot of contact with you. You can actually feel your teeth in the tip of your tongue if you do dólar, okay? But if you say Paraguay, you're doing something slightly different, because the movement of your tongue will be very quick and you're not feeling the teeth that intensive way, okay? It's just very quick. You almost don't feel it because it's a very quick, and your tongue is very shy in this movement. So you just say Paraguay, Mérida, Ecuador, okay? And in Ecuador, it's quite easy to notice what your tongue did, because it made dor, okay? So the first sound is very long because your tongue is moving slowly and it's touching your front teeth. But when you pronounce the final letter, the movement is the same but very quick. Ecuador, okay? If you try this, you'll do it correctly, okay? And this is very, very simple, actually, okay? So it's nothing that if you're an English speaker, well, you can do that, okay? So no problem here, because as I told you, it's just a slight change if you compare with the pronunciation of the, okay? And now the surprise, because one next step will be to pronounce r, which is actually very simple, because you just have to see that the letter R is at the beginning of the word, or it appears double in the middle of the word, and then your tongue is going to do the same work as it did here, with the difference that now you're going to expel the air, because here you did not expel air, okay? Your tongue was moving, but you did not expel any air, you did not exhale. But now you are going to exhale, and you're going to exhale with a lot of gusto, okay? So you're going to go for it, okay? So you exhale, and your exhale is what makes your tongue go all wobbly, okay? That's the secret. So your tongue actually doesn't need to do anything. Your tongue will do the same thing as it did here, but you're not going to move your tongue consciously, okay? So your tongue is only going to do whatever the air that is coming out of your lungs is making your tongue do. So it's like if you have a flag, the flag and the wind, well, the flag makes this movement because the wind is blowing. So when you exhale, then the air that comes out of your lungs is what makes your tongue go all jittery, and that's the rolling sound that you make in Spanish. Doesn't have to do with bending your tongue backwards. Do not do that, because that's not the right way to do it, okay? You just have to exhale, and the strength comes from your lungs. So the effort is being made in this part of your body, not in the tongue. The tongue is just a muscle, but it's a muscle that's not being flexed here. It's just chilling inside of your mouth, and when the air comes out, your tongue goes all wobbly, I said before, in lack of a better word, okay? So just notice what I do when I say these example words. Costa Rica. You see, I exhale, so I need to let the air come out of my lungs, and when I do that, my tongue just goes with the flow, okay? The tongue hasn't any willpower. The willpower comes from my lungs. So, Costa Rica, Rio, Purranque. That's the secret, okay? So it's not about your tongue doing heavy lifting. It doesn't do it when you say Costa Rica, Rio, Purranque, okay, is the air. The tongue just moves along, okay? So this is one way to explain it. And you may find words in Spanish that have the two different sounds. So pay attention to my voice. Rosario, Romero, Rio Negro. Okay, so that's quite interesting. So rolling your R's in Spanish is not difficult. Okay, you just need to know the tricks, which I just showed you. Okay, so to sum up, in Spanish you can greet with the following words. I'm just going to say them aloud to you because you know their meaning, so nothing new here for you. Let's just repeat them together. Hola, buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches, hasta luego, adiós, ¿qué tal? Bien, normal. Okay? Por favor, gracias, de nada. Perdón, no pasa nada. You see, you do not need any translation because the words, they are shown to you in a very logical manner. So you do not need to see the translation all the time. But if you want the translation, you have in the material, okay? So you have an extra video where I repeat all this information to you if you want to see the words. But actually, you don't need to, okay? Because, well, everything is clear. Some useful words that you just learned now. Let's see the alfabeto and la pronunciación. Then, the letters in Spanish, I'm just going to say them quite quickly to you, okay? So, A, B, C, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, L, M, N, Ñ, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. All right? In Spanish, we have el acento, and when you see a word with acento, you know that this vowel must be stressed, must be highlighted, emphasized. And you know that that's what I just told you, so, but in Spanish, okay? So, si una palabra lleva acento, ahí está la sílaba tónica, which is the same as saying that if a word has an accent, there is your stressed syllable. And the second information will be that if a word finishes or has the ending in a vowel or the letters NS, then you're going to stress the second to last syllable. In Spanish, you say, si una palabra termina en vocal N o S, acentuamos la penúltima sílaba. Then you have some more information regarding the pronunciation. You know that all these combinations have the sound of K. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you the letters, okay, and make the sound so it can be easier for you. C-A, C-O, C-U, Q-U-E, Q-U-I. And the sound will be K, okay? Then you have Z-A, Z-O, Z-U, C-E, C-I. And in my way of pronouncing Castilian Spanish, I made this sound here, so like in English, think. But if you were having a conversation with a native Spanish speaker of Latin America and also from the Canary Islands and some regions in southern Spain, this person would make the sound of S. So it would be, in this accent, would be Z-A, Z-O, Z-U, C-E, C-I. Then you have the letters L-L and also the letter J at the beginning of the word or in the middle. And you have two possibilities. You can make the sound E and you can make the sound J. Okay? Then you have the combinations here, which are G-A, G-O, G-U, G-U-E, G-U-I. And then the sound will be G. Okay? Even though in my voice I said the sound is G. Okay? The sound will be made in these cases here. J-A, J-E, J-I, J-O, J-U, G-E, G-I. Then you have two options. You can make it softer, like I just did, or you can make it like someone who speaks Castilian Spanish would make a little more exaggerated. So I'm going to drink a little water because I need water to do that. You have J-A, J-E, J-I, J-O, J-U, G-E, G-I. Okay, so this would be very powerful sound. Okay, you don't need to exaggerate that much if you don't want to. And then you have the letters V, B, which have the same sound in Spanish officially, which is the sound B. Okay, and then you have these three special letters, which are H, no sound, CH sound ch, and Ñ sound Ñ. Okay, well, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. I know it was a lot of information, it was a long video, but as I told you, if you understand these principles, you'll be able to pronounce any word correctly in Spanish. Okay, so learning these principles allows you to at least pronounce Spanish correctly, okay? So that any native speaker will understand what you're saying. So if you take any random text in Spanish and you read it to a native speaker by, well, following the principles that I just explained to you, this native speaker will be able to understand everything you say. Well, if you read a random text in Spanish, you may not understand what the text is saying, but you do make the right noises with your mouth and your throat and your tongue and so on, okay? So I hope you enjoyed this lesson. You have a lot of free material to practice all this information. Just take a look at the course page where you're currently at, okay? Muchas gracias, that you know it means thank you very much. Y hasta luego. See you soon.